Okay, hello. Welcome back to another video. Recently, the people over at Chestnut sent me this Chestnut Evo, as I'm sure many of you are aware, given that I did an unboxing video, testing it out, showing a few of the features, etc. semi-recently on this channel. But today it's time to try and beat the toughest engine. Now, that does not mean max level Stockfish, but for those of you that watched that other video, I played if we click a bots match here, I played Chestnut's own AI, Maya, on Elo level 1. Now, that wasn't much of a challenge, but I'm thinking if I whack it up to 9, Elo level 9, the maximum Maya Elo level that seems to be available here, inbuilt into the board. Am I going to fare well? Who knows? So that's what we're going to be doing today. I'm going to be seeing if I can beat the level 9 Maya chessboard inbuilt to the Evo. But first, it's time for some movie magic. There's one, and there's two. On second thought, you probably should not throw around these pieces. They are electronic and quite expensive. I guess let's do some more movie magic. I'm going to set up the board in 3, 2, 1. I don't know how good that would have looked, but I'm imagining pretty sick. Right, we've got the board set up. We've got one of the most inventive camera angles. My phone's on a tripod, so you should be able to see on this side of the screen, somewhere over here maybe? No, here maybe? What I can see directly here on the screen, it might obscure some of the board, but frankly, of course, you're going to probably be making reference to the digital board, as let's be honest, none of us can play over the board anymore. Online chess has ruined our brains. The way I play over the board now is like this. But without further ado, let's get into the game. Now, because I cannot be bothered to change this whole very precarious setup, I'm going to play with white. I'm just not rotating the whole thing, moving my tripod. It's taken me so long to line this up to be hopefully pretty slick. And then let's start the flipping game. Oh my lord. Okay, we're going to start with a little E4. Mr. Maya, which by I mean Miss Maya, presumably, or Mrs. Maya. Who knows? Maybe she's married to Stockfish. I want someone to write me a full chess engine romantic fanfic in the comments. Right, we're going to go for knight to f3, knight to c6. We're going to get to play a Scotch, thankfully enough. Maya takes. Okay, fantastic. And of course, I'm going to be looking to recapture here. Now, knight f6. Golly. Right. This is, of course, the Schmidt variation of the Scotch. Was kind of hoping for a classical variation with bishop to c5, but, the most popular move at mass level is indeed knight to f6, and for good reason, because it does kind of cut down on a lot of the exciting things that white can do. There are two main approaches here. Only really two approaches that I know of. Either we can take that knight on c6, and then after b takes c6, play e5, and, push the pawn and chase the knight forward here, but that line gets a bit particular, Knight c6, bc6, e5, knight d5, or rather, sorry, not even knight e5, but like queen e7. We've got to play queen e2. I don't like this. I think we're going to go for knight c3 here. Bishop b4, of course, this is the natural follow-up. Pinning the knight, of course, I've just defended my e-pawns is the other way of going about things. Now, the only real playable move here, because you're in a bit of a pickle, You can't play bishop d2 and unpin because you hang that knight on d4, and can't play bishop d3, you hang that knight on d4 again, you're disconnecting the queen's defense to the knight. So I think we will just be taking here. So far, perfect theory from the engine, which is ostensibly 1900 rated, but I think that's FIDE ELO, which is, I don't know, maybe my strength, I've got no idea. Now at this point, and shout out, of course, to Will Taylor Glazer, a valued member of the Will Taylor chess community, who actually has given me more theory suggestions than I'd like to admit, and has directly contributed to a large portion of my repertoire. Hit me up in the comments at one point saying, listen, your bishop d3, which is the next move of theory, defending the pawn because, of course, the knight's pinned, like, it's solid, but there aren't really many ways to get interesting play there. In the Lichess database, however, queen to d4 scores unreasonably well. c5 is played. Now, this is a very human move. The engine top move is queen e7 there, preventing, I do believe, queen e5 check. Can I go for queen e5 check now? Is that the idea? I don't know. c5's been played. The idea kind of queen d4 is that we attack the bishop, of course, which is loose, vaguely threaten queen e5 check, also defend our knight and also the pawn on e4. If they'd taken the knight, we could have taken with the queen. Knight takes e4, queen takes g7. I think I will give the check. I'm not really... I know to play this. I know to play this because it's interesting, but I haven't really done the requisite research into exactly how to respond to c5. I think here, queen e7, of course, and then... Am I going to try and play an endgame against an engine? I think yes, unfortunately. Maybe I need to look more into this or look into this further, excuse me. Hold on, queen e7, king e7. Did I look at this? And then bishop d2. And if you take and pick up on e4, I can take on g7. Right. I think actually I'm doing pretty decently here. I think the pawn structural damage that it has, of course, been done is probably, advantageous for me in the endgame. I can play bishop d2 here, or do I play f3? It turns out that I have gone into an endgame against a strong engine. So, this is a big test for Will Taylor chess here, It's been said. It's been said many a time that my endgames are not necessarily my forte, and probably for good reason. So this might be, I mean, given that I'm practicing over the board right now as well, and I might be trying to play some over the board in the very near future, this could be good practice. So candidate moves here. Obviously, pawn to f3 is a move, which in the back of my mind, in the back of my mind, just some good vocals for you guys there. Wait, didn't that guy like kill someone? We're not going to sing that guy's song anymore, but I'm also very enticed by bishop d2 because I don't like the idea of like f3 and then bishop takes c3 bc3. I don't know, I've got the bishop pair, but bishop d2. I think I am going to go for bishop d2 here. I don't know. Bishop b7, okay, interesting. Maybe now I play f3. Because if they'd gone takes, as in taking the knight, I'd taken it and then taken on e4, I could have taken on g7 and almost certainly been better there. Now when I play f3, presumably I just build up rather effectively. My sleeve might be obscuring the screen there. Well, unfortunately, you're going to have to do. Why am I looking at the microphone? I'm going to look at the camera. Absolutely professional YouTuber right here. Okay, clearly, King f8 is on the horizon. I mean, queenside castles looks logical. Maybe some g4, g5 actually looks logical as well. I could also play a3 and just ask a question of that bishop. There's some context where, hold on, does it make sense to go a3? And if bishop a5, knight d5 check, knight takes, and I pick up that bishop, you know what? I think c5 might have its drawbacks. When they push that pawn to c5, when I now play a3, they're going to have to take. They didn't have to take, but there was an interesting way to get a bishop pair there, I think, if they'd gone bishop back to a5, because then I can give a check, you take, but I don't recapture, I simply take the loose bishop, getting me a bishop pair. Probably that's looking good. Also, though, you just immediately can see the bishop pair here. I don't know if I'm making some kind of mistake. It doesn't seem obvious to me that I am. Surely I can recapture here. I've got a pleasant bishop pair. You're just going to step back to f8. Okay, a3 probably a really nice idea. And you know what? Paired with c5, this could be exactly the way to punish what's going on here. Also, hold on. I mean, I know I've been talking about the bishop pair, but I can just play bishop takes f6 right now. Is this the home of brutal attacking chess, or is this a feature of Will Trader chess? This might be Will Trader chess currently playing. Listen, there's been a lot of you requesting that I do some kind of road to master over the board series, which I might embark upon, but if I do, I probably will have to start playing slightly more boring chess, at least before I can then, build my fundamentals up far better, before I can then play better, more exciting chess. And right now, like, if I was playing over the board, and this was for FIDE ELO, if I take on f6, gf6, and castle queenside, we have identical material, but you have 4 pawn islands, the maximum number of pawn islands you could possibly have. You have an isolated h pawn, doubled isolated f pawns, an isolated a pawn, and doubled c pawns. I just have to be better. I also have probably the best situated rook on the board, although actually that's not clear. The thing is though, if I play bishop takes knight, g takes knight, queenside castles, you play, let's say d6, because, okay, it would come with tempo on that pawn, of course. Maybe then I get bishop b5. Do you know what? I'm sorry to do it. Maybe I'm going to get some hate in the comments for this, but I'm trying to be mature right now. We're going to see, can I actually successfully play this style of chess? I'm going to castle out of the way of the pin that the rook is exacting there, d6, and the reason I've gone for this is that I ended up liking the idea of bishop b5 for some reason, because if I induce c6, does d6 not become much weaker? Yes, I mean, that is definitely true. And if not, then I'm just developing this with tempo, so they lift the rook. Okay, awesome. Hold on. I simply have to be slightly better here. What have I done? What have I done? I'm staring at this position now. I hate this. I suppose it'll be a good test to see if I can actually convert this kind of position into any kind of advantage. There is something beautiful about sort of trying to take a Magnesian endgame and, draw blood from a stone. This is not a Magnesian endgame drawing blood from a stone. I clearly have far better pawn structure and honestly should be way more comfortable with converting this. But maybe I don't even have an advantage. I don't know. Endgames are confusing, man. Rook d2. Let's improve this. Okay, a6. Interesting. You're going to kick the bishop, but not in a way that destabilizes your d pawn. Fair. I do quite like bishop c4, actually. We just really control d5. Why not? Really control d5 and say, you're not playing c6 to build up to play d5 because, of course, that d pawn's getting very weak if you do that. So maybe right now, if I don't know, some rook d1 maybe? Why not rook d1? Or rook hd1, I should say. That rook's tied to the a pawn right now, which is a bit of a target. My bishop seems to be well placed. Everything seems to be, at least relatively well placed. Is there an argument to play h4, h5, h6 to then play rook h5? Now that is the kind of nonsense that I desperately want to play. Do you know what? I'm going to play h4 because I think h5. I knew it. Okay. I thought h5 was going to be the response there because if I get to play h5 myself, rook h4, rook f4 is legitimately a scary prospect. Like, what do you do about me just going rook h4 and rook f4? That f pawn's terrible. So this is now pushed. But now it's a fixed light squared weakness, you know? It's an isolated pawn that's now fixed on that h file. And I genuinely, I mean, I don't see a reason why I couldn't go rook h3, rook g3. Not that I have anywhere really that I'm infiltrating, but it doesn't seem completely stupid at least. Also, wait, hold on. Do I not have bishop d5 here? Bishop d5, you take, rook takes, you have rook to flipping out e5 in the end. Then rook comes across. I feel as though, I really truly do feel as though this has to be a good move. At the same time, though, it could be kind of liquidating. No, you know what? You know what? Bang. Thank you very much. Of course they're going to trade here. Of course, of course. And then rook takes is going to give me access to that soft weakness. We do see rook e5 as calculated. Of course, I'm not taking that, although maybe there's some arguments to take there that I can't currently come up with, but we don't want to redeem that pawn structure. I mean, it's a rook and pawn. I have to be better here. Okay, now, rook d1 is kind of what I want to do. I'm just thinking rook h3, rook g3 is interesting, but at the same time, I just don't have, like, g4's help, g5's help, g6's help, g7's help, g8's help. There's no way in there. I could go c4. Pawn to c4, double outpost the rook. You're never playing c6, I can just take the d pawn. And then the idea might be that if you take, I can take with my pawn. Right, I'm starting with rook d1. They're gonna bring their rook across or not. Okay, I'm rather personifying this engine right now. I think it's time to bring my king. I think it's if I get my king. Hold on, because your rook really has no moves. Apart from trading, of course, which just betters my rook absolutely. So it does seem, endgame fundamentals wise, improve my king. Surely this will bear fruit. King d2 and king e3. Almost a no-brainer, other than the fact that after king d2 immediately, you get this option to trade the rooks, and I can't recapture with my rook, which I don't love. So genuinely, I'm starting with rook d3. Start with rook d3. They now take the opportunity to trade. Okay, I mean, I was now just going to go king d2, king e3. Maybe even sliding across with this rook and infiltrating would be interesting. But they take here, I guess, waiting. Oh, excuse me. Thank you, Evo, for telling me where to put that pawn. We're going to take with the pawn. I don't see a case to take with... sorry, not the pawn. We're going to take with the rook. I don't see a case to take with the pawn. Unless I do, because then we get that e-flat. No. Look at this beautiful active rook. Look at this beautiful active rook. What are you doing? Ooh, you're doing that. That does seem like some counterplay, okay. Obviously, I have rook d2, and then maybe I could leg it over with my king. I can also take on h5, lose g2, and have the outside pass pawn. Play rook f5, and kind of that rook will be holding the f3 pawn, and interesting. I definitely should have got my king more involved a little earlier, I think. Rook d2, do I just... I might concede too much if rook d2. Maybe you just play c6 and d5. You start playing moves that really sort out your pawn structure. I take on h5, you take on g2. Rook f5, you go rook h2, I go h5. And you've just got to stay glued to that pawn, it feels like. While my rook's in a hole, maybe you go c6, d5 at some point. Rook d2, and then being real slow bringing the king over, to then eventually use the rook and just be real solid. Kind of feels like the way to go right now, instead of taking that h-pawn, because that h-pawn is permanently weak. My g-pawn, yeah, it's backwards, but I can defend it, you know? Rook d2, what do you do? c6, king d1, king e6, king e1. Get the king to f2, and then start doing something more interesting with the rook. Okay, maybe I should take on h5. I'm, for some reason today, possessed by the spirit of an absolute coward, and I'm playing rook d2 here. Or maybe I'm possessed by the spirit of a genius, I don't know. I mean, king d1. King d1, what are you doing? Rook g3? No one cares. Oh my lord, are you going to put your king on f4? If you do that, I'm going rook d5, rook f5 mate. You're walking into a mating now, I don't believe it. It'd be a very human thing to do, but I don't know. Here? Oh dear. This is where you start redeeming everything. Hold on. I attack the rook. The plan is clearly, I believe, pawn to f4. But at that point, I go back into d5, and then... Or I could just take here now. King takes, then give the rook check. King f4. Do you know what? I'm inviting this. I'm inviting f4. Do that. Close that out. You're not redeeming your structure at all. My rook's going back into d5. You can play c6. You can kick my rook. Be my guest, because I do believe your rook's got, like, no moves and everything should be collapsing. sincerely hope. I'm taking h5. That weakness that we fixed there earlier, I do believe is now collapsing. Give me that. I don't want to rush this, but it does feel like the moment where everything starts falling apart in my opponent's position. It sort of capitulates. And I mean, do we not have like takes and then rook g5? I think this is game over. I do believe this is game over. I do believe WTC has turned out to become, or be rather, sorry, maybe one of the greatest players to ever have graced the board with his presence. Rook g5 forces an exchange of rooks, takes. Oh no, you just go king f5. What am I talking about? And then why just lose that pawn? Amazing. Okay, so I'm actually stupid as hell. I still think that trade was correct, even though we bettered the structure. I can get another outside pass pawn, rook to h6, or the rook g6, but then takes, and I play g3. I must be better. I just simply have to be. I think any rook trade must result in me having a better position. I'm up a pawn, and my pawn structure is still healthier. If I go rook h6 check and you go king e5, and you come up, I can at the very least take on a6. Thing is, rook g5 is very forcing, so I feel like I owe it to myself to calculate it. Rook g5, hg5, king f5. Yeah, that's just nonsense. What am I even talking about? Okay, so then rook h6. Is there anything else? Whatever. Rook h6 check. Yes, come back there, and I do believe takes, g3. How can I not be better there? Maybe I can be. Maybe I am. Maybe I should keep my rook on the board. Maybe rook h8 and coming in and behind would be a good idea. I am redeeming the structure, but I am on the clean pawn. Takes, g3. If you take king takes, I simply have to be... Oh, do you create a passed pawn somewhere? Oh no. Because you can create a passed pawn on this d file, which I absolutely despise the look of. Takes, g3. What if just like king f5 and I go check or something? Yeah, no, then I go g3 check maybe. Or g4 check, excuse me. So rook g6, fg6, g3, takes, king f5. And then what do I do? Because you're just going to go, and I believe... I could play b3 actually. Does that stop you from creating a passed pawn? I'm thinking if rook takes, pawn takes... I've just realized I don't know how many of you are going to be finding it easy to follow this calculation. I'm not saying I'm a calculation genius, but I know that there are a decent number of beginners that watch my videos. So normally the arrows are probably helpful. I'm sorry if in this format that is, left wanting. Feedback in the comments would be massively appreciated, but it's a bit more of a direct over-the-board experience. Takes, g3, takes, king f5. Yeah, I don't like it. I just don't like that. I feel like I'm going to get in some trouble. And genuinely, why on earth would I not keep the rook on the board? Why on earth not? Rook h8. Okay, here we go. Rook g7. Nonsense. Absolute nonsense. What does that even remotely achieve? I don't understand. Are you just waiting? Hold on. Hold on. What? Just rook a1. Aha. Didn't think about that. But I have a check at least. I'm taking this, dude. What are you talking about? Check. Bring your king up. I'm 2 pawns up now. 2 pawns up. Things are looking scary because maybe I do lose my h-pawn. But your pawn still sucks on the f-file. Or both your pawns, rather, on the f-file. That's the problem. You got 2 pawns on the f-file. They are doubled. I do have g3, which feels like a no-brainer, but I just want to be slightly careful that I don't really fumble this. I could also move my rook once more, because I have a pass pawn on the a-file now. Let's say rook to a5. What do you do? King d4, c3, king f5, b3. That's legitimately interesting, actually. You take on b3, I take on c5. Or maybe you take on c3, I take on c5, you take on b3, I take on d5, okay. I believe in that. I don't think king e5 is a good idea. So then rook a5, what? You're going to play pawn to c4. Very possible, but I feel like it slows down your mobility with that d pawn. Right, you know what? I'm going to start with this. This could be something of an error. Okay, well, they just take that. Honestly, I was kind of happy to see that because now that's just a trade. And after the king comes in here, I have 2 connected passed pawns. This simply cannot make any sense. Right? How can this make any sense? You don't have a check. My king's so safe here, right? I'm just going to go rook c7. Yeah, and now you're on the defensive. And you cannot make any progress with your king. You have like 1 move with your king. And am I not? Simply. I daren't be rash. But also, a4. What? There's not a stalemate here. That is absolutely mine for the taking. I mean, maybe. There just was no way to stop that passer. And I do believe now, okay, now I can sit back, relax, play b3 check because I might as well, push the pawn because I might as well, give them counterplay with a passed pawn because I might as well. I say counterplay, that is, you know, absolutely far from counterplay. We can go here, they can bring this. We can, of course, bring our queen back to life. And maybe we'll try and do a little efficient checkmate here. Because I am thinking if we go check and you come under, it looks like that is absolutely checkmate. Hold down your forehead, Maya. Turns out Will Taylor Chess is the well, I was going to say the greatest player of all time, the greatest endgame player of all time. I guess I'll cut to an analysis segment. We'll see how I handled that. But in terms of for some over-the-board training, to start dabbling in this on a more regular basis, you know, privately and also possibly publicly. Let me know if you enjoyed this video. Let's cut to some kind of an analysis. I'm definitely going to have forgot to do that clap. Okay, so it's a day later and I've slapped this game, WTC versus Maya level 9, into a study here. I've run a computer analysis and this is the graph that we're looking at. It seemed that I built some advantage here at the opening. Good opening stuff. You know, the brief dip into Queen D4 here was worth it for the 1.3 advantage after King F8. And then we're going to analyze this properly, but I mean, uncharacteristically terrible. Bishop takes F6. I don't know what came over me yesterday. But then, you know, roughly even, nothing major, nothing major. Garner some advantage, lose a little bit, garner some advantage. Obviously, you know, past this point, past move 28, we kind of just stayed better for the rest of the game until the unbelievably efficient conversion. 95% accuracy. The engine, ostensibly, you won't be able to see this, but played with 89% accuracy. I do feel like that felt like a 1900. That might be like a chess.com 1900 though. I don't know if I believe that that's a 1900 FIDE because, well, I don't know. I mean, it's an AI trained on the way people play, so I am thinking this moment here where F5 was played, the most obvious blunder, but actually maybe the AI is somehow picking up just a sort of, you know, a helplessness of this position where you can't make any progress whatsoever with the king. The two pass pawns are just going to roll, and then maybe I just push this and you get carried away and you lose this. Maybe there's something there. Whatever data set it was trained on, for instance, has picked up some sneaky little trap idea. Because apart from that, it seems to make fairly logical moves. Let's go through the game. Not loads of analysis will be required because, of course, yeah, this is we take knight f6, the Schmidt variation, knight c3, bishop b4, takes, and then, yeah, this moment here, shout out again, Will Taylor Glazer, can't believe I'm giving him direct credit here in this video, but if you notice the Lichess database, 51%. Everything else does not score fantastically for white. I mean, okay, bishop d3, you can't see it behind my face cam, but it's 50-50 roughly. Actually, it's 49-44, that's not really 50-50, but 51-44 with queen d4, a move played 4% of the time. It's unlikely black's going to have direct prep against this. The most common move is to take here, which is not a great idea, and I believe I mentioned this line in calculation, where at this point they've got to go like this, and we end up in this position with a bishop pair, perfect, pristine pawns, and their position sucks so badly. But we go for queen d4, they go for this c5 line, slightly inaccurate, and then I was correct, I do believe, if we slap on the engine. Yeah, queen e5, queen e7, takes, bishop d2, perfect. I'm glad that that was the correct choice rather than going for f3 immediately. I was probably getting slightly confused with a different line. Then f3 best. Okay, so this was perfect so far. g4 and queenside castles, both good moves, but a3 as well. I mean, look, all of these moves here, all of these, whoa, let Stockfish catch up to the genius that is Will Taylor Chess, and it finds a3 to be the most compelling. The point was that either way we get a bishop pair here. If bishop takes, which is what happened in the game, we get ourselves that bishop pair, and if bishop here, okay, it likes queenside castles, but same evaluation pretty much, maybe not. Yeah, whatever. This is completely trivial fluctuation. You know, if they'd gone for knight takes, we could have picked up this loose bishop, sweet, and then, okay, apparently knight e3, and this is vaguely concerning. I guess I don't have this because you just take here with check, but king f2, if you take here, I guess this pawn hangs in the end? What the hell's going on there? And then there's something freaky happening here. If this, then check, oh my lord, here. Trade this off and then bring this back. I mean, yeah, I'd have been slightly better here. So this little knight d5 idea, going a3, you know, getting the bishop loose, and then knight d5 would have been cool. But we get to this position, king f8, and here, okay, the graph exaggerated a bit. I wasn't plus 1.3. You let the engine think a little longer. It's about a +1 advantage. I'm better out the opening. Just castle, you know? Just castle, make the threat of the remove the defender tactic here, which if they don't address, of course, then it makes a lot of sense to grab this. Their pawns are possibly the worst pawns you can ever have in a game of chess, and if they of course defend it with like a d6, then I mean, okay, bishop a5, maybe bishop b5 still reasonable. Yeah, you can just move the rook and we get to play g4, and we just got a beast of a bishop. I don't really know why I was so willing to give it up. I just think I wanted that pawn structural damage. Honestly, I'm glad to see the engine reinforce my instincts that this was a bit lame, and I can only apologize for it. But now it becomes slightly more drawish. The castle's the d6, bishop b5 best, fantastic. They lift the rook. I stack my rooks. Again, I could have gone for g4, etc. But all of this now, I think we're in the phase of the game where, yeah, we were just chilling around roughly 0.3 3 plus or minus, which I don't know if there's anything that productive to say. You see, look, king d2, rook g1, taking here, it's all just the same. King d2, though, I'm surprised, because I'd have thought takes, and then we don't have this little plan. I like the plan that I went for, getting the rooks in there, very practical. Rook d3 as well. Now, they could have brought this rook across. I think taking on d5 was kind of unprompted and gave me this excellent rook, and then when they did bring the rook across, again, the engine likes this. It likes rook d1, apparently. I guess after here I can then take on h5. But my rook d2, okay, I mean, again, this is all just zeros. All just zeros, but I think I came up with a nice plan to go, you know, hold this, maybe get back in and start infiltrating. Again, just practically it's hard to hold on to, and this engine is designed to play like a human. And I really do think white in this position has much, much better winning chances, because, yeah, look, you go for this idea of trying to outpost that rook, and I say, fine, your rook sucks, I'm going to win this. And look how quickly, look, rook d5, the advantage jumps up here. We go in, we nab the pawn, and then from here on out, it was pretty clean, I think. Although c4, apparently, significantly better than anything else, which I guess makes sense, because we can go pick up c5. Yeah, okay, that's actually really good. I don't know why I didn't think about that at all. I think I was just so obsessed with the idea of maybe trading the rooks or rook h6. I mean, he did go for rook h6, wasn't great. They could have just gone f6, but rook g6 also decent. Apparently not. Takes, was I right that takes g3? King e2 it prefers, but if g3, takes, king f5. I saw this position from a few moves ago, and I just thought here, and you create a pass pawn, and I get over here, and then maybe you somehow, you know, step in, win this, and there's a pass pawn here. It felt like slightly risky, but I mean, now that you're looking at it on the board, it seems pretty logical as well. But here, keep the rook on the board. Again, going in behind, I'm just better. I'm just constantly better here. This, grab this, thank you very much, and then could have gone for b4, whatever, at this point. You know what? That wasn't bad. That wasn't bad at all. I'll take 95%. It did feel relatively human, although it wasn't too difficult to beat, I don't think. So I do believe I've conquered the Maya bot. Of course, if I want a harder game on the Evo, I can just play Stockfish. I don't know if that will play as human-like. Well, I highly doubt it. It definitely won't. However, I massively hope you guys enjoyed this video. Definitely a little bit sort of non-classical for the Will Taylor Chess channel to not have the arrows, and, you know, the board UI might not have been super crisp. I'm not quite sure. I haven't edited this yet. I really hope it's not bad. Hopefully, you know, over the board, actual pieces. It was an interesting change of pace. But rest assured, I'll be back to the normal 10-minute rapid Lee Chess gameplay videos damn soon. I'll see you guys on the next one. If you enjoyed this video and you want to support the channel, check out the Patreon. Links in the description. Like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Hasta la vista. Goodbye.